So today we got this enclosed trailer up on the lift. There's what she's in for. So we're gonna fix that. This trailer is gonna be going from Florida to Canada several times. We're gonna fix that, and then on these other spring perches, it's only welded on the sides with that nasty little cold weld. So we're gonna add some weld. Same thing with the other side. This side is not broken, but we're gonna strengthen that side up for them. So let's get into it. All right, the first thing I did was I unbolted the shackle and the bracket, the spring perch that goes up on the trailer. I'm gonna wire wheel and get all these clean. Get the old piece of the frame rail off of there so we can start adding all our new stuff. People are always asking me why do they break, why do they have problems. Look at the hole in that weld. Look at how small these welds are. That one's not terrible, but I mean, look at that. And that's one of the better welds on the whole trailer. Fortunately, that's not what broke. It ended up just ripping a piece of the frame rail off. But yeah, I mean, no welds on the fronts. But that's something. If you're going to buy a trailer, it's worth your time to crawl underneath it and look at some of the welds and maybe pick out a different one. You know, some of them are better than the others. A tip for you guys, if you're going to grind a plate off of another plate or a piece of angle that's welded, instead of just starting to dig in and start grinding right on the top there, what I like to do is I like to get me a nice, good, sharp, hard disc. This one's a pearl abrasive. This one is ceramic, so it gets sharper as you cut. They work great and they last a long time. Start grinding this edge here and you'll grind down, and then you can literally see the plates where they're two pieces. So I'll start grinding it down and I'll show you here in a second. Alright, it didn't take much grinding and I got to it. I don't know if the camera's picking it up, but that crack where you can see it's two separate pieces. All you gotta do is knock some of that weld down, take a little bit of the plate off, and you're good. And then you're not digging into the material that you want to save and have to reuse. So just a little tip from Sean. Okay, got all the old weld and plate off of it, cleaned it up real good. I used a 60 grit flapper disc. It's sharp enough to take off the old stuff, but not too sharp to where you start taking off material. So that's ready to go back on. So our shackle pieces here. So let's go start working on the frame rail of the trailer. First thing we're gonna do is strip out all the rust. We're gonna use one of these rice cakes. That way it doesn't take off any more material and thin out that frame rail any more than it already is. So let's get that cleaned up. All right, so we're getting cleaned up, but now to weld on the other side like it is over here, we're gonna have to notch some of that trim so that I can get to the steel and get in there and weld it. So what we're gonna do is mark it here. So it's gonna need to go about here. That way we can put a weld there and right about there. Well, maybe a little bit farther, right about there. You're not gonna be able to see it because it's behind the tire. So let's go on the other side and notch that out. All right, so now we got that notched out. Right in line with where we're gonna be welding. Probably gonna have to trim this just a little bit. We'll mark it out so it stays nice, and then once we put this piece back on, you won't even see it. Plus the tire being there, it's good. Okay, now that we got all the rust cleaned up and we can kind of see where the rust stops, I made me a piece here. Come in, just like that. Be welded right over top of that rust hole, and then we can weld the spring perch right on top of it. So what I like to do is I like to take a marker and outline where this place sits. That way I'm not taking off too much paint and protection off this, so it makes more rust later down the road. So let's get that going. All right, I got my marker outlined. That's right where the new piece of frame rail is gonna sit. So I'm gonna I got 60 grit on my little die grinder so I don't take off too much material and steel, and get in there and clean up to weld it. It's gotta be shiny, nice and clean. All right, we got all the paint cleaned off and I clamped it into position. Got a real nice fit up. There's a little bit of marker on that. That's why it looks like a bigger gap, but it's nice and tight all the way around. I'm happy with it. So we're gonna start tacking it in. As far as a welder goes, using the Everlast Lightning MTS 275. It's a MIG, TIG, and stick. It's got the water cooler on the bottom that you can buy extra. I've got 2 of these machines, and I've welded a lot of aluminum with it. It welds AC and DC on the TIG. I've really come to like this machine. Like I said, I got 2 of them. I'm going to do another video on going through all the settings and what settings that I use on this machine. Alright, she's all welded on all the way around. So now let's get this new spring perch. We got to get the old bolt out. It's seized up in there, but we'll get that bolted up and start getting the spring perch welded on. I went and got new hardware, and I got it sorted. The bolt started on just tight enough and snug enough to where it holds the bracket so it doesn't swing around. It's all loose. To get my distance right, to get it right back on the same spot where it needs to be, I'm going to come over to this one, and I'm going to run my tape measure from the front of this to the front of this. Then I'll come back over there and put a mark on the new piece of frame rail. It was 21.5 inches, so I measured off of there. I went here, put my mark, and line the bracket up. Again, I tighten it just enough to where it holds it and it's not falling all over the place. So it's nice and tight. I can put a tack on there and get that welded on. And then we can snug these bolts down. All right, so we're welded on all the way around 360 degrees of both pieces. The shackle bolts, these are lock nuts, so they'll never back off. What you want to do is you want to tighten it until you can feel the bolt bottom out, to pull itself all tight, and then you want to back it off 1/4 to 1/2 a turn. That way when the spring compresses and extends, the shackle's not in a bind and it'll work like it's supposed to. If it's too tight, it will put a lot of stress on our repair and cause it to crack again. So those are just as important as the repair. All right, she's all done. We got that guy all welded up. I went around and added weld all the way around except for on the trailer park side, but there's already weld over there. It's just not the best, but added weld onto all the other spring perches, and we'll spray some paint on it so that the welds don't rust and the new stuff don't rust. But that's how you fix this broken spring perch on your trailer, camper, motorhome. Well, I guess not motorhome, but you know what I mean. RV, pull behind, camper. So, all right guys, thanks for watching.